Welcome to Tengridome. And yes, this is actually going to be an actual episode of Tengridome, and not a catch-up episode or a collaboration episode or anything of that sort. It's just going to be me talking about last week's event and pretty much nothing else. No bullshit. I'm kind of like not in the mood to fuck around this time, and I'm actually in kind of sort of good shape to not turn the episode into a farce. Last week's episode was a collaboration with the Forbidden Technique podcast, guys, and the Forbidden Technique is our new podcast that comes out under the Fight Side Podcast Network umbrella that's going to offer weekly coverage for pretty much all the important events that happened during the week. And those guys, actually, Christian and Silas, they actually watch everything that comes out, or at least the majority of it. So if you want to listen to clear-cut, no-nonsense, bullet point style combat sports analysis and recaps, that's the show you listen to. Tengridome will remain, well, my show. It's going to be the weird show of the Fight Side. It's still going to be the same thing. So I'll offer post-fight breakdowns and maybe like fight previews on occasion, like basically do whatever I want, and the occasional... I really want to get back to covering like big picture stuff, the topics that not a lot of people talk about in general, like the thing that, for example, the thing that I've done with Hacks and Dan and like operated, like the communicating analysis episode, honor and martial arts episode, that kind of stuff, and the conversation with Nate Corey. I really want to get back to that, and thankfully... Well, not really. It's not really a good thing, but I guess thankfully for me, the next several events aren't going to be like super important. So if you want if you want weekly coverage of those, you will still get it. But I'll try and like figure out a way how to cover a more substantial topic, more like a meta kind of sort of thing. But regardless, either way, let's just get into the breakdown for now. UFC 271, Adesanya versus Whittaker 2. And the main event, honestly, kind of sucked. It sucked! It was kind of a boring fight. I mean, it made for an interesting viewing live. It was a gripping combat sports competition. It was a bout. It was a clash between Israel Adesanya and Robert Whittaker for the second time. Not much has happened in that fight. Not much. Like Adesanya was content to sit on a... I guess it's kind of a trend for him now. He's kind of content to sit on a comfortable but not very substantial lead, if you get what I mean. Like he sort of kicked Robert Whittaker up, connected with some nice leg kicks early on, kind of stopped doing them for a while, connected with a couple body kicks in the middle portion of the fight, the occasional like counter that didn't exactly like put Whittaker on his ass. Outside of that knockdown in the first round, it's kind of like also the camera work for this fight was surprisingly very bad. Normally, the UFC does a very good job. The UFC camera team does a very good job of covering the fight from multiple angles, so you can actually see what's happening. And looking back, I remember seeing, and I have revisited the fight first thing in the morning, not like too intently. I just kind of like skimmed through it. But what stuck out to me what struck out to me, I guess. How does the fucking word work? Is it struck out or is it stuck out? Stuck out, I guess. I don't know, fucking English. Fucking English. Not my first language. Fuck it. What I noticed is that like there were lots of angles where you couldn't quite see what was happening very well. Like you could see that the strike connected, but you couldn't see like whether it connected well or whether it was a glancing blow. You get what I mean. But they did show on replay in the first round that Adesanya threw a feint and Robert Whittaker committed to a check, like he lifted his leg up and he was on one leg, and Adesanya caught him with the right straight, and the right straight sort of glanced off his beard and then hit him in the chest. So it was kind of a glancing blow that off-balanced Whittaker, because he was on one leg, he just toppled over. But still, it was still a chin connections, and for scoring purposes, it can be a knockdown. I don't know. Either way, the first round was pretty much a 10-8. Lots of judges scored it as a 10-9 for Adesanya, but if you look at the scoring criteria, and this is what this episode is going to be about mostly, like scoring criteria and how everyone scored the fight, because to me, it was kind of a clear Adesanya victory, a tepid victory, but still a victory nonetheless. But a lot of people are arguing in favor of Rob Whittaker, and there's lots of arguments going around, like saying that this was a robbery. There was lots of very silly arguments about whether leg kicks or jabs should score more. And I wouldn't pretend. I would not pretend that I don't think they're all very silly. They're all very silly, but we'll get into it all later. For now, let's recap what's happened. So, okay, first round. Adesanya walks Whittaker down. Whittaker, from the start, he looked like he was looking to draw Adesanya in. Like, initiate exchanges and then counter Adesanya's counters. And it's something that I talked about in the preview article. We wrote a really detailed Staff Picks preview article where we talked about the whole main card, and pretty much every prediction turned out to be true, outside of the TAI TUIVASA prediction. We'll get into it later. Let's zoom out a little and lay the groundwork for the subsequent analysis and recap. So, what I wrote was, if you wind back to the first fight, the important points of improvement that Whittaker would have to have been zeroed in on to have a better performance this time around is the obvious one is to not get starched, and to his credit, he did not. He didn't get starched, so it's already an improvement, a massive improvement. But the first point was that everyone knew that it has been made clear that Rob was not exactly in the best frame of mind coming into the fight, and while it can be dismissed as an easy excuse, your actual mental state really does matter when you fight, because it affects your decision making. And Rob sought to replicate Kelvin Gastelum's success against Israel Adesanya, and he thought, I'm a better fighter than Gastelum, so if I try to do what Gastelum did, I would have more success with it. And what actually happened, the execution of it was really lacking. He overextended himself wildly to the point of breaking stance and putting his center line right in front of Adesanya's counters. And while he was able to beat Adesanya to the punch on the initial blitzing entry, the mechanics of his entries work in such a way that he actually has to put his foot at a 90-degree angle to stop himself, and it's really hard to follow up with offense from there. And if you try to throw a right hand from there, it basically turns into a shift, sheerly because of the mechanics of it. If you train. And if you've ever tried to play around with the blitzing, karate, boxing type of stuff, it feels fun. It's very fun. It's a fun style. Yeah, you can cover distance very quickly. Large swaths of distance get covered extremely quickly, but then you run into the problem of stopping yourself and then mounting follow-up offense. So it's kind of a hard cap on how much you can accomplish with this style. Then he basically headhunted Adesanya, didn't kick the legs, didn't hit the body. Basically, and all Adesanya really had to do was sort of lean backwards and then rebound with counter hooks, and that's how Whittaker got starched. And so Whittaker, coming into this fight, frequently talked about how he well, he expressed his appreciation for Jan Blachowicz' performance against Adesanya in multiple interviews, and in his recent outings against Darren Till, Jared Cannonier, and Calvin Gastelum, he showed that he's working on striking in transition, he's working on his takedowns, he's working on wrestling, that kind of stuff. And many people thought that, oh, okay, that approach makes sense. Maybe it will bring him more success this time around. And it sort of did, but simply wrestling, Robert Whittaker, for Robert Whittaker to simply wrestle fuck Adesanya, he would have to have certain, tools that he doesn't really have. So wrestle fucking Adesanya into oblivion was a bit of a stretch, and the reasons are the reasons that I have outlined in the preview is that Robert Whittaker is not an enormous Polish man, first of all, so simply sitting on him is out of the question. Simply sitting on Adesanya will not work. Second of all, he doesn't really have the same range parity with Adesanya like Blachowicz. Blachowicz, once again, is an enormous man with long arms. And the initial problem is just that Adesanya outranges Whittaker by a lot. His arms are way longer. He stands way taller, and Robert Whittaker normally just generally sort of starts from way outside. Because if he doesn't start from way outside, he'd get kicked up. The kicks are there for Adesanya, and if he tries to float back closer to Adesanya, he may it kind of creates the danger of starting exchanges that he may not win because his stance is so plated. But it's one of the side effects of his karate boxing style. He stands so side on, and when you stand so side on, it becomes extremely difficult to maintain long exchanges. It's you can try it. You can assume, first of all, a normal boxing stance that is sort of side on, but also more fronted. And from there, you can actually throw long combinations and take really small adjustment steps to kind of sort of reposition, win positioning against your opponent in the pocket, utilize more dramatic head movement, and then rebound with counters. When you stand so bladed, when you stand so side on, it's much more conducive to dropping back on a counter and then rebounding with a single strike and then circling off. You can't exactly reposition in the pocket in a bladed stance unless you actually adjust that stance and stand more front, facing your opponent more head on, so to speak. And beyond that, Robert Whittaker's offensive wrestling prowess primarily shows itself in upper body tie-ups. He's decent from the body lock, decent from over-under or double-under clinch exchanges, and he can trip or throw you from there. And he did kind of try and do the Frankie Edgar against Darren Till, and he threatened the knee tap, the high crotch, and then instead of pursuing the takedown and chain wrestling, he just let go of the takedown, let go of his grip, let go of his. He'll bail on the takedown, and then he will come back with right hands, uppercuts, and overhands, knees. But that's still not the same as grabbing someone and, flipping them ass over tits. It's also really difficult to do against someone who is so longer than you, unless you hit into the body, which is something that Robert did not do. And that's another point of contention for me with his performance. The shot selection was just kind of just a touch short of he actually needed to do to win this fight. So, and beyond that, Robert doesn't really have the top game, and we saw that in the fight. He doesn't have the kind of top game to hold Adesanya down and beat him up. Prior to the fight, everyone talked about how he embarrassed Calvin Gastelum on the ground, but Gastelum is largely a non-entity of his back. He doesn't really shrimp. He doesn't fight grips. He doesn't hip escape. He doesn't work with his legs to create separations. He doesn't use butterfly hooks. He doesn't use doesn't do any of the BJJ stuff that you can do to get from under someone. He just basically lays on his back, lays flat on his back, chills, waits until you try to advance position, then he turns, gives off his back, gives you his back, and then he goes for a fat man roll or like a Granby. So it's not the same. It's not exactly comparable. So what did Robert actually have going for him? Basically, if he were able to beat Adesanya to the punch on his entries, and he did connect with lots of double jabs, but a double jab is an entry. It's a safety lead. You don't exactly the way if Robert were to jab the same way like someone like, for example, fucking, I don't know, Golovkin or Sonny Liston does, then it would be a damaging attack. But the way Robert jabs normally is that he does he uses it as a setup for a right hand or follow-up offense or basically everything else. Robert did not throw a single fucking right hand in that fight. None. Or maybe he attempted a couple, but the ones that he did attempt missed, and he almost got clattered again for his troubles. So what were the avenues available to him? Well, punch the fucking body. Adesanya's preferred defense against incoming striking offense is to lean back. And when you lean back, that may bring your head out of an oncoming strike's effective range, but you can't at the same time suck your spine backwards when a body shot comes, when you lean back. And the legs also become a viable target for the same reason. And if Robert were to pressure Adesanya, and he did on a couple occasions, press him back, have him backpedaling towards the fence, and when Adesanya circled off after backpedaling, Rob could have kicked the trailing leg, but also the problem was that Adesanya was just too far away. It's kind of like, it became kind of like a catch-22. He is catching Adesanya with double jabs and triple jabs and blitzing forward with the jab, but Adesanya backpedals so far that if he kicks, his legs are now out of range of Robert Whittaker's kicks. Because, well, the idea is that you pressure someone to the fence, their back is now square against the fence, you can throw straights to the body, you can throw body shots, you can just kind of unload on them, and if they circle off, you can either catch them with an intercepting hook to the body or to the head, or you can kick the trailing leg, because they're moving and they can't lift their leg to check while they're moving, while they're circling away. But Robert Whittaker was not able to create this sort of situation to capitalize on that particular opening, and he could tie up, and he did tie up on a couple occasions. He did get takedowns from there. Because punch and clutch is a very good idea against. It's a good idea for launching transitional offense. You you throw a jab, they throw a jab in response. You duck under, you tie them up, you create space, and then you launch elbows, you launch uppercuts. Basically, the sort of thing that Justin Gaethje sometimes did in WSF and still does in UFC on occasion. It's good if you want to stifle someone's pocket boxing, if you want to stifle a potent pocket operator. It's also just annoying to deal with, but the problem is that Adesanya is pretty decent in the clinch as well. He's pretty good in there. So Adesanya knew how to defend against he did a good job defending against most of the transitional strikes that Robert threw. And Ryan Wagner kind of hit the nail on the head that Robert is going to seek to tie up and throw transitional strikes and miss with them. And that's kind of what happened. Robert did connect with a couple of good uppercuts, a couple of hooks off the break. So I guess he found some success there. And once again, just a touch too little. If he found a little bit more success with those attacks, then we could be talking about a split draw or something. I don't know. And then the last one is the most dangerous route, but also the one that would pay the highest dividends, is to counter the counters. Enter range, stay within your stance, bait hooks, bait uppercuts, cross counter, left hook Adesanya's face off. But easier said than done, obviously, and it was turns out it's just, well, first of all, Adesanya is way too fucking long. Also, way too fucking good in the pocket to just get caught with strikes like that, with counters like that. And Whittaker's mechanics, they kind of fucked him here. Whittaker's style, the karate boxing style is, in general, is the kind of style that has sort of like hardwired, hard counters to it. It's one of those styles that's very fun to play around with, very effective against select opposition, but the moment you meet a good, more traditional, a more traditional, fundamentally sound kickboxer or boxer, you start running into problems. It's like the same situation that we saw against the same situation that we saw in Kyoji Horiguchi versus Sergio Pettis. Sergio Pettis started like out positioning Horiguchi in the pocket, landing with good, nice uppercut, left hooks counters, because he just was playing a more traditional boxing game, and then he could sort of like baited a committed entry from Horiguchi and like he baited a committed exit from Horiguchi, and Horiguchi like started like explosively bouncing out of the pocket, and then Pettis caught him with a spinning hammer fist. Another fight that created a lot of controversy in the post-fight discussions online. Everyone talked about how the fight was a fluke, but if you go back and watch the fight, Sergio Pettis was kind of building towards that strike. You don't just at this sort of level, at this level of elite competition, you don't just throw something and it doesn't just connect. You may not have been thinking about it, but fighter instincts being what they are, subconsciously he kind of knew what he needed to do, really. Sorry, sip of coffee. Recording first thing in the morning while my brain is fresh. Okay. The problems. Why Whittaker wasn't able to pull off what on paper is a game plan that makes a lot of sense. Well, first of all, that's basically now 2 fights in a row where Whittaker's approach made sense conceptually, but his shot selection and the mechanics and technical ability in select areas aren't allowing him to tie it all together for a winning performance. Like, once again, he didn't get flatlined. That's a good thing. He didn't get flatlined this time around, but it's just not enough. Like, so the way I saw the fight happening, as it unfolded, like, we're going back to the recap now. Again, Rob obviously looked to draw Izzy in and counter, but he was allowing Izzy to build and back him up. Like, Izzy's feints backed him up, Izzy's straights and kicks were there all day for him. And then in the second round, Whittaker managed a takedown entry and managed to get Adesanya, managed to take the fight to the ground, but Adesanya right away showed urgency in running to the fence, building back to his base, moving up, rebuilding his stance and running to the fence. And then from there, he's done a good job of to fight grips, but Whittaker once again did a mat return. Adesanya started posting along the fence, and this is where, if Robert had better grappling instincts and better wrestling instincts, he would have secured that wrist right away along the fence. And it's one of those. It's an instructive situation because it's kind of just shows that while Whittaker's wrestling credentials and wrestling capability, they're pretty great. For his style, they're very good, and it's kind of insane that he's been able to become so good at wrestling while not being a base wrestler. And we saw that in multiple different fights, like the way that he was looked unwrestlable against Yoel Romero, and the way he wrestled against Yoel Romero while completely exhausted in the second fight after getting knocked down and his bell rung. But it's he's not an offensive wrestler. He's not an offensive grappler. It's kind of like he has sort of like, let's say, 6. The way we have a Discord patron, Discord subscriber who does a lot of BJJ, and he knows a lot about BJJ, and the way he put it is that Whittaker has sort of like 6 out of 10 offensive wrestling / grappling. But in order to beat Adesanya in these exchanges, he would have had to have, like, you know, I don't know, fucking 7 out of 5? 7 and 5 out of 10. Sort of like wrestling grappling. I know I frequently make fun of the way people like treat fighting like sliders. But in this case, it actually makes sense. So, like, for example, Robert Whittaker attempts a blast double from way outside, and it's one of the problems that I noticed in the fight is that Robert was just starting from way too far out. And I guess it's because he was afraid about getting kicked up, because once again, as I think I've said it already, like standing a bit a touch too close would have got him kicked up even more badly, and he would have actually received a lot of damage and may have gotten knocked out if he stood there. It's kind of a catch-22. You either enter range explosively and get countered, or you stand too far out and get kicked up. It's one of the problems that Robert was facing. It's kind of really, it's an uphill battle for Rob all the way through. It's kind of amazing that he's done so well. Like, Easy's, but the exchange I'm trying to think of is the one where Rob attempted a blast double from far out, got sprawled on, and Adesanya was just sprawling on him, and when Adesanya let go and stood up, Robert didn't like chain wrestle or anything. But the problem is that he could have continued wrestling from that position as well. If he were just a touch better at wrestling, he would have known to peek out and get Easy turtling and secure Easy's back from there. And from there you can secure all sorts of rides. You can most guys at 135, 145, and sometimes at 155, they do spiral rides, they do ankle rides, they do all sorts of rides. Really, like, you know, basic, like, sort of folk style grappling stuff. Folk style wrestling, I'm sorry. Folk style, grappling stuff that you can do from that position. But Robert Whittaker doesn't do that. And it's kind of like, I know it's kind of it's a bit inconstructive to criticize Robert for not doing that, because it's kind of like asking someone to just learn new tools on the fly. But I guess if you're serious about committing to a wrestling game plan, this is something you should look into. It's not rocket science. It's really basic stuff, you know? But I guess it just represents a certain problem with the approach. It all ties into the problems of Rob's shot selection, his mechanics, and once again, select skills and level of skill in select areas. It's one of those weird situations where it made sense to commit to a wider strategic adjustment, but the tactical tools that he had coming into the fight were just not there. Normally, in fighting, we talk about how a fighter had all the tools to win, but did not necessarily do the correct strategic adjustment. For example, the fighter in question didn't choose to pressure. The fighter in question didn't choose to sort of like fight off the back foot and run his opposition into counters, that sort of stuff. The opposite is true in this particular case. And to credit Whittaker's corner, they've been calling a lot for... I seem to recall them calling for body shots, and one thing that they called for is right hands. Throw right hands, Rob. Throw right hands, Rob. You gotta believe, Rob. At a certain point, they just started yelling, "You've gotta believe, Rob!" And Rob is like standing like 12 feet away from Adesanya. Blast double! You gotta believe, Rob! Rob is like on a hill from outside the cage. He's actually like up there with the audience. Looking at Adesanya, his brain is replaying the first fight over and over again on a loop. I guess that's the reason why Rob didn't throw right hands. It's like he was connecting with the occasional hook and the occasional counter jab, the occasional hook of the jab, and those were fine. Those were good connections, but they were just so spread out across the fight. so spread out. And in return, Rob would just get kicked in the leg or in the body, and there weren't a lot of them to warrant like for me to say like, oh, Rob got like fucking kicked up to shit. But you know, it's the fights are scored on damage, and Rob didn't really accomplish anything with those takedowns. And basically, I guess the reason why Rob didn't throw right hands is that maybe a bit of armchair psychology there, but I think it's not inconceivable to think that every time that whenever Rob threw a right hand, kind of stumbled forward, his brain started replaying, "Oh fuck, I'm gonna get starched again," and it's kind of the vibe that I got. That's where we're at now. We're analyzing vibes. The vibe that I've got from Rob is that he was really like sort of really concerned to not get knocked out. Really concerned about not getting knocked out, and he fought the way that kind of fought not to lose, as opposed to fighting to win. You know, I guess for those intents and purposes, that was a good performance, but it was not a winning performance by any stretch of imagination. Although a lot of people are imagining that it actually was a winning performance, and you know, I think I've made it clear enough that I disagree with that. I disagree with that quite a bit. Because I was rooting for Whittaker as well. I was rooting for Whittaker the whole way through, and I cheered every time he got a takedown, and then I went, oh, he's not gonna do anything with it. And really, Adesanya is fighting grips, he's just gonna get up. And there they go, they're separating now. Oh, a whiff on a transitional strike. Yeah, big whiff. Nice attempt, though. And that was basically the fight for me. So it was kind of frustrating. It was a bit of a frustrating watch for me. It's not like I was frustrated with only Robert Whittaker. It was the onus. The onus was obviously on Whittaker to adjust, but the onus was also on Adesanya as a champion to actually, you know, have a good performance and not sit down, and not cruise to a decision. Like after the third round, I said that, like, okay, Adesanya needs to step on the gas in the next round. Now he has to step on the gas and walk Rob down, blast leg kicks, and fuck him up. Didn't happen. Rob actually started having a bit more success with the double jabs. He started getting desperate. Started getting jabs and jabs off the hook, double jabbing, triple jabbing into range. Secured the rear waist lock at some point. Didn't like trip from there. Didn't try to trip Adesanya from the rear waist lock. I guess part of it is because Adesanya is so fucking long, so he has huge levers. So it's kind of hard to grapple against him. But also, Robert was just kind of sort of holding on for dear life, looking for, like, trying to prevent Adesanya from fighting off his grips. And Adesanya is very diligent about fighting grips. Actually, like if you go back and watch his previous fights, the takedown defense isn't... The defensive instincts against takedowns aren't all that great, but the grappling instincts in chain wrestling situations, they're okay. They're alright. He leaves openings still, but he's focusing on the right things. He's focusing on fighting grips. He doesn't do stupid shit like hold the grip with the one hand and then throw like a back elbow to the guy who's holding onto a waist lock, because that's what a lot of fighters do in MMA when they don't have really good grappling instincts. And then Rob, for some reason, tried to jump on Easy's back. Just jump on a back mount without a grip or a hook. Didn't get a hook in, just jumped on it. Kind of like a hero's sidekick. Like, you know, the scene in movies where like a big, huge monster is attacking the hero's palsy. Attacking the hero is like laying flat on his back. Has a pistol, aiming with a pistol at this gigantic monster with impenetrable skin, and then a sidekick just jumps on the back of the monster and starts stabbing him in the neck. It kind of looked like that. Because generally what you need to do, the thing with backpack rides and back mounts is that someone is standing, okay? You jump on their back, you secure body triangle so you don't fall off, you don't slide off, you go double unders from the back, and then from there you can actually control posture. You can break the posture of your opponent, and then and from that position, you can start working on either securing a standing submission, or you can transition to other positions, and maybe the opponent will just topple over if they're not decent at maintaining their balance, because it becomes very hard to maintain your balance when someone has such a strong grip on your back and is like pressing back on you and kind of like trying to just off balance you. Either way, Rob slid off, and it was back to square one from there. That's kind of the fight. I guess the swing rounds are round 2 and 4, I'd say. The second round, it could go to Rob. I'm fine with giving it to Rob. The first round is a 10-8. The third round, still Adesanya. Fourth round could also sort of go either way, but kind of leaning on Adesanya still. And the fifth round is Adesanya's. Well, no. The fifth round... no, the fifth round is actually the Rob round. Yeah. So, what does this make for? 48, 46 Adesanya? 47, 45 Adesanya? I don't know. That's a fucking scoring. Fuck it. Not the point. God. I'm actually getting bored thinking about this fight. It was a gripping fight, watching it live once again, but objectively, like, it's not very entertaining. I guess the takeaway is that if you were to stuck Jussi of a Miga into an embiggening machine, or like if Gilbert Burns were a touch bigger, Adesanya would have been fucked. I guess that's the takeaway. I don't know. I guess it's one of those situations where the first fight was just such a fucking shutout that when the guy that... If the guy didn't get starched the second time around and had more success, and the other guy was kind of having a tepid cruising performance, then people are like willing to overrate it. Also because Robert Whittaker is a fan favorite, a lot of people are sort of like willing to smear Vaseline all over their glasses, you know? Overlook a lot of the successes that Adesanya had, a lot of the overlook that Robert has not been able to accomplish much with his offense. Like, the only real damaging bits of offense that were there were like a couple counter jabs, a couple left hooks, at most. No right hands. And then a lot, like, I got into a lot of stupid arguments, even with like Conor Rebush of heavy hands. Conor Rebush was like, I said that, okay, a leg kick is more damaging than the jab. It hurts more. It fucking hurts more. It hurts a lot. And Conor Rebush was like, but what is the meaning of hurt? Like, you know, like, what are we doing here? We're gonna argue about the meaning of words now. People were like, but no, conceptually, a jab from a trained boxer may suck about as much as a leg kick from a trained kickboxer. Well, let's teach the boxer how to throw leg kicks then. And then he will jab you, and then he will leg kick you. What do you think will suck more? Like, what's the difference? And it's like, that's not the argument really here. It's like Robert Whittaker is not the kind of, like, once again, a Gennady Golovkin type jabber. You know? And Adesanya like ruined Paulo Costa's entire fucking life with the leg kicks that he threw against Paulo Costa in their fight. We know that Israel Adesanya kicks fucking fuck off hard. They suck. His leg kicks suck to get hit by. What are we even arguing about here? And people who train as well. There were a couple of people who were like, no, I actually have training experience, and I think conceptually I recognize that if I were to get hit by a jab from a heavyweight, I might get knocked out, as opposed to getting leg kicked by a middleweight, you know? You know, it depends. It depends. That's not the issue here. That's not what we're talking about. In this fight, Israel Adesanya's leg kicks, they sucked more than they were more painful than Robert Whittaker's jabs. Okay, Israel Adesanya was backpedaling, putting his head away from Robert Whittaker's jabs, and he was catching Adesanya on the tail end of his knuckles. And then he would get kicked in the leg, and Israel Adesanya would blast him out of his stance, and Robert Whittaker would go skidding along the canvas as if it was an ice rink. You know, like the people were like, "Oh, Robert Whittaker's movement wasn't impaired by those leg kicks, so they don't count. He didn't show visible signs of damage from those leg kicks." Well, first of all, Robert Whittaker, listen to the corner audio. Robert Whittaker was like, "Oh, fuck, my leg hurts," after the first round, after he got kicked up. And then, second of all, visible damage? You know, that's why body shots don't score. That's why judges don't score body shots. Like, people... I think, like, Sandro hit the nail on the head, like, when we were talking about this fight, like 6 months ago, everyone was jizzing their shit about the low calf kick and scoring like every single one like a knockdown. Oh, the calf kicks, they're so damaging, they're so crazy, like completely unbeatable technique. And then and now leg kicks don't score because it's your favorite guy fighting in there. Like, the guy didn't show the effect of the damage. That's why nobody scores body hits. Like, yeah, you get hit in the body, it sucks, but unless, I guess, you're Daniel Cormier and your belly jiggles, and you go, "Ah, fuck!" Nobody will score the body strike. I guess unless it's an Aldo, wind up like a Marge Simpson hook to the body, and also because it's Aldo. Just crazy shit. Fight fans, man. You know, just some consistency would be nice every once in a while. Like, I know it's a silly example, but I think if this fight were to take place in Thailand, they would just score this as a 50-45 shutout in favor of Adesanya, because they don't give a shit about jabs. It's pretty stupid in its own right, but you know, it's still closer to reality than what people are thinking when it comes to MMA. Like, an MMA fighter would watch like a fucking a fight between, like, I don't know, Sam Khor Kiatmontep and what's this guy's name is? I was watching like a highlight of a Muay Thai fight or a kickboxing fight between Sam Khor and a Japanese guy. Fuck, I'm blanking on his name. Give me a second here. Yuya Yamamoto, I think it was. And there was, in this highlight, you see a lot of kicks connecting to the body and connecting to the legs and connecting to the arms. And both guys are just, okay, I got hit. I'm continuing. Let's continue kickboxing. Do you think none of those kicks scored? None of those kicks should be scored? I guess that's what most MMA fans think. At least those that scored the fight for Rob Whittaker. And running around screaming their heads off about it being a robbery. Rob is a tough motherfucker. Fighters are tough motherfuckers in general. It would take a while until they start limping and crying about getting their leg chewed up. You know? Do you think Uriah Faber, you look back and watch the Uriah Faber versus Jose Aldo fight, do you see like Uriah, like now there's, do you think every single fight should be like that for leg kicks to score? Huh? Ugh. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's all so stupid. The sport is stupid. The fans are stupid. They're silly. It's all silly. Anyway, I guess we can wrap this thing up and get into where we go from here. Honestly, not very interested in seeing a third fight. It's kind of it's just, you know, for as many, Rob can Rob can fuck up as many contenders as he wants, basically now. He can just demolish everyone and look great, secure some nice names to his legacy, I guess, and then retire peacefully. It's just that adjusting for Adesanya is just such an uphill battle for him. I don't think he's ever going to hit on a game plan that would allow him to win, or even get away with a decision. Because Adesanya is also going to, you know, think about this fight. He's also going to make adjustments. Like, for example, he may step on the gas now, may actually like pressure Whittaker and fuck him up along the fence, knock him out again. Robert just fucking hates that Adesanya is so fucking long. So every time he fights Adesanya, he has to cross like an ocean of space between them. he needs a fucking a jump drive from June to get to Adesanya and fight him effectively at a range that he's comfortable with. And his mechanics, the mechanics of his karate boxing style aren't built to handle someone who's taller than him, who's so much taller than him. If he had the mechanics of someone like, I don't know, fucking Justin Gaethje, maybe he would have had more chance, because then he would have an overhand that doesn't take him out of stance. Maybe he would have low kicks that would have punished someone who stands so tall. But it's basically asking Robert Whittaker to become someone else, and you can't ask that from someone. It's a dumb criticism in the first place. It's also Robert Whittaker is also very late into his career, like basically nearing the tail end of his career. He's had a great run, but now he's had lots of mileage, lots of incredibly scary fights, and drastically reworking your style to fight against one guy. It would be a remarkable achievement if he pulls it off, but it would take a lot out of him. And I think he would be 2-1 in the trilogy, and he will likely be forced to retire afterwards. So I'm not sure if I want to see it. I may change my mind, but that's how I feel about it now. I guess, I don't know, I guess Rob will fight Strickland. Will shit kick Strickland, and then Adesanya will fight Cannonier. Probably shit kick him as well, or maybe like have another tepid decision. And then they'll fight again. I don't know, middleweight is sort of becoming increasingly less and less exciting as time goes on. Paulo Costa, I don't know where he is. Paulo Costa is too busy. Paulo Costa is now too busy making shirtless selfies and captioning it with "I'm so heterosexual now today, feeling so heterosexual today." Feeling like I may want to fuck a chick today, lads. That's what he does. That's what he's busy doing today. It's only he's only shot at relevance these days. Fucking hell, man. Anyway, that's 15 minutes we spent on what is an actually really boring fight. But I only watched the main event, but the main card. But the main card was pretty fun, pretty cool main card. The co-main, the real main event. The real main event of UFC 271 was a heavyweight fight. The real main event of UFC 271 was Tai Tuivasa versus Derrick Lewis. Can't believe I just fucking said that. Just an incredible fight. Honestly, no joke. I'm not even fucking joking right now. It was the best fight on the whole card. Tai Tuivasa came in with a game plan to pressure Derrick Lewis behind low kicks and jabs to the fence and to clinch exchanges. and strike Derrick Lewis with elbows on the break. And Derrick Lewis's game plan was to wrestle Tai Tuivasa. Let that fucking sink in. And both game plans were working. For the most part. It was working. Derrick Lewis stole Tai Tuivasa in the clinch. They separated, then they entered the clinch again. Derrick Lewis took Tai Tuivasa down, connected with hellacious, absurd Derrick Lewis ground and pound. And we know how Derrick Lewis ground and pound looks. It's Derrick Lewis ground and pound. Tai Tuivasa survived. Ground and pound from Derrick Lewis. Build up to his feet. Exchanged with Derrick Lewis. Tied up with Derrick Lewis. Got Harai Goshin by said Derrick Lewis. I don't fucking know. Oh no, it was a hip throw. It was a hip throw. Derrick Lewis. Derrick Lewis hooked Tai Tuivasa's ankle and threw him over his hip. Perfect execution. Or as perfect as it could have been for Derrick Lewis. Fucking Tai Tuivasa tied up with Derrick Lewis and knocked him out with elbows. Absolutely starched him. Just incredible. Genuinely incredible. Tai Tuivasa, it was another one of those what the fuck I love Tai Tuivasa now. Because I didn't care about him after he tried to exchange with Junior Dos Santos while lying underneath Junior Dos Santos while Junior Dos Santos was in full mount. But then Tai Tuivasa went and starched Greg Hardy. He knocked that fucker Greg Hardy out. So that was cool. And I thought, okay, that's great. Tai Tuivasa, I may watch your next fight. And now he comes out and does this. Actually, really encouraging stuff. From both guys. Well, I guess less encouraging for Derrick Lewis because now I have concerns about his chin. Getting knocked out like that doesn't do good things to your chin and doesn't say good things about your chin so late in your career. But Tai Tuivasa stuck to a game plan and executed it. Executed it pretty well. That's pretty nuts. That's kind of nuts. So I guess let's all get on that Tai Tuivasa championship run where the end of the line is getting starched by Francis Ngannou. Getting fucking flatlined by him. Or I don't know. I guess getting decisioned by Francis Ngannou as he rides it out, as he rides you out along the fence. Wrist rides you. Ground and pounds you into oblivion. I don't know. Jared Cannonier versus Derek Brunson. Unanimous pick from staff. Unanimous Jared Cannonier by KO in the second round pick from the entirety of Fight Side staff. Poor Derek Brunson. You could tell that Derek Brunson worked his ass off to get better at striking and tie his striking to his wrestling and to figure out how this whole MMA thing works, but it's the way he tried to fight Jared Cannonier is an immensely tiring game plan. Sure, you took Jared Cannonier down and sort of kind of beat him up on the ground, but Jared Cannonier is incredibly strong. He's just such a fuck-off strong man. Got up each time. Derek Brunson, not necessarily the kind of smothering top control grappler again. Jared Cannonier built up to his feet. That's how round 1 came to a close. And then round 2, Derek Brunson visibly worse for wear. incredibly tired, and sort of reverted back to his usual mold, the usual Derek Brunson staple of running forward and trying to take someone down with your chin, like leading with your face. Well, as the old saying goes, fatigue makes cowards of us all. Not implying obviously not implying anyone is a coward. It's just that meaning that you just get reverted to your usual habits. When fighters get tired, they start doing the usual shit that got him in trouble before in previous fights. I guess I'm sort of excited for Cannonier. Cannonier has really, he's obviously extremely physically gifted. Not exactly the best craftsman, the most nuanced craftsman, but he's okay. Has an eye for a counter. Should lead more. Should pressure more. Throw more. Use the jab. Basic usual criticisms. He could conceivably drag a really weird, low-paced fight from Adesanya, I'd wager. I can't imagine that happening. Jared Cannonier is powerful and rangy enough to kind of scare Adesanya into passivity, and so Adesanya will start doing the usual feint, low kick type of stuff. Another type of decision. Hinato Moicano, the king, Hinato Moicano. Money Moicano. Choked out Alexander Hernandez. Cool fight. Hernandez sort of had him in trouble in spots, but still, Hinato Moicano much better. Great counters by Moicano. Great club and sub by Moicano. And classic, lengthy, weirdly rambling, like meandering interview by Hinato Moicano. I just love those. You should make them longer and longer with each subsequent victory. But Hinato Moicano spoke out in favor of increasing fighter pay. Hinato Moicano likes big checks and he cannot lie. He has a son to haze. Come on, UFC, you fuckers. Hinato Moicano has a son to haze. It's okay to make fun of Hinato Moicano's accent because I actually like him a lot. So it doesn't count as, discrimination. I guess it was kind of nice seeing a fighter be so outspoken about getting paid well, because a lot of the time it's fighters begging for shit from the UFC. Please, I want that bonus, Dana. Please, Jibus. It's kind of depressing. It happened lower down in the card. Pretty much fight of the night. Douglas Da Silva de Andrade versus Sergey Morozov. Check out that fight. DSDA mounting an extremely cool comeback, coming back from a beating, and it's not like a kind of like a weird knockout kind of thing. It's he actually like bit down in his mouthpiece, turned the fight ugly, and wrenched that victory from the jaws of defeat. And normally the opposite is true in MMA. So that ruled, but then it was quickly turned heartbreaking when he said that he really needed that bonus because his mom is ill and needs a new wheelchair. Just grim shit. Just makes you feel bad for watching this whole thing, this type of stuff. Obviously not DSDA's fault. Anyway, back to the main card. The first fight of the main card was Bobby Green versus Nasrat Haqparast. So basically, what I said was coming into this fight was that Haqparast was kind of sort of the kind of prospect for Bobby Green to look cool against, and that's pretty much what happened. Bobby Green looked cool as always, boxed Nasrat Haqparast up. Nasrat Haqparast kind of lost sight of what he can be. Lost sight of his better attributes. And entirely blame the move to TriStar for that. Just, I don't know what they're doing at TriStar over there, but they haven't been churning out good fighters for a long time. Right, just Faraz Zahabi riding those coattails, riding those GSP coattails. Just grim. Also suddenly turned into a COVID denialist. I remember people talking about how Firas Zahabi used to be the smartest man in MMA, like this brain genius, and now it's just... Alright, that's enough about grim shit. Let's talk about more grim shit. Russia is about to invade Ukraine. Way! My native currency is going to completely plummet. Way! World War III, resource wars. Let's kick them off. Let's kick off World War III. Yeah! Anyway, that's what's been on my mind lately. Kind of, that's one of the reasons why I'm feeling under the weather lately. The last couple of weeks, maybe. Things are not looking up, folks. Obviously, I'm not gonna get conscripted and or drafted unless things go really off the rails. But that's why your support becomes starts mattering even more. I'll need the money to survive. Fucking smooth segue right there. Just, talking about fighters begging for shit from the UFC, and now I'm begging my listeners for shit. Because my country is run by a bunch of like crazy people who love war and oppression and disarray and chaos and pain, Nah, I guess I'm gonna be okay. Okay, so did I talk about this in the beginning of the podcast, or didn't I? I don't fucking remember anymore. But yeah. Look forward to the weekly Forbidden Podcast episode where they're going to talk about their take on the fight, their take on UFC 271. Also, I'm pretty sure they're going to do a preview of the upcoming Fight Night event, because they're going to offer weekly coverage. Also, we're going to record, I'm assembling a team. I'm going to assemble our staff and record the first revival episode of the Fight Sites MMA podcast, where we're going to run a digest on what's happened currently in the UFC. The topics that I want to cover are basically like the events that happened so far, major takeaways and such, what this means for the fighters that were featured on the events, state of division so far in 2021, what sort of like matchmaking we can expect, what fights make sense and what don't. Maybe something random, some kind of trend, a shift in the meta. We can talk about that. We'll probably also talk about how, I guess, basically the quality of the events and what could be done to make them better. I guess nobody's going to take our criticism in earnest, but I guess it's worth talking about still. So we're gonna do a digest. Certainly look forward to that. Also, alternate commentary for the main card by Sriram Muralidharan. That boy was incredibly biased for Whittaker, as always. He's incredibly biased for all his boys. And it's perfectly fine, because he's actually pretty good at watching fights and pretty good at scoring them live. So look forward to that. Maybe Ed will do a Bad Calls episode on that fight. I don't know. Depends on his schedule, whether he has the time or not. And I guess that's from me so far. That's the schedule for the week, at least in terms of MMA. Lukash records weekly previews for boxing cards, and also records weekly podcasts where he talks about the boxing cards. So listen to that. Also, what do I have to plug? Do I have anything to plug? I think that's that. I think that's it. Again, please support us on Patreon. The commentary is always going to be available on Patreon. Everything is available on Patreon. We're trying to figure out our schedule, because, again, pretty much all of us do this as a hobby. We don't do this full time. We have lots of shit going on, so we kind of like we put a lot of effort into what is basically free content. and we put a lot of effort into putting out content that's incredibly cheap. Lots of content for $3, $5 per month. I mean, it's a fucking steal, folks. Come on. Also, you're quite literally feeding my family. No joke. That's my only source of income right now. Doing this shit. I could have been a porn artist, you know. I could have been running a porn video game scam on Patreon. You know how much money those make? $100,000 per month. They run the scam for maybe a three years, never finish the game, take the money and run. That's what they do. I could have done that. Instead, I'm choosing to fucking talk about fights, talk about fucking the gayest fucking sport on earth. Jesus. You should be grateful to me. Alright, anyway, that's your choice. If you think I'm full of shit, that's your privilege. That's your right. I guess that's enough of that. UFC 271 post-fight breakdown. Okay, event. Watch the event. It's pretty cool. You can catch up on it. There's lots of cool fights. Main event, I don't know. Kinda skippable. Interesting. It's certainly interesting, certainly instructive. At least the first time around. Revisiting was a pain in the ass. Heartbreaking for Robert Whittaker fans, I guess. I'm a Robert Whittaker fan. I was rooting for Robert Whittaker very hard. But all this narrative building around this fight almost makes me wish Robert Whittaker got starched for the second time. That's how vindictive I am. I'm a vindictive asshole, okay? I'll be the first person to admit that. I'm not ashamed of it. It's probably my worst trait. Also one of the most defining traits. I'm an asshole. I'm a fun-loving guy that's an asshole for fun. Being an asshole brings me joy. God, I never know how to end these, do I? Just never know when to stop. Okay, I've plugged everything. We've talked about the fight. That's it for today. Episode over. I'm fucking off. Okay, bye. 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 Bye.